The late afternoon sun poured over the crowded parking lot of Brightmart Plaza, a place that always looked like the entire town decided to shop at once. Shopping carts squeaked, children shouted, and engines hummed in the constant traffic of Saturday errands. The air smelled faintly of roasted coffee from the cafe next door and the hot asphalt shimmering under the sunlight. Jake Miller, a 42-year-old veteran, drove slowly through the chaos. His dark blue Ford pickup crawled forward as he searched for an open space near the entrance. His right knee, injured years ago in service, ached with every press of the brake. Hanging from his rearview mirror was his blue Handicapped placard, faded at the edges but valid, a small card that meant he didn't have to limp across long parking lots. He spotted it, an open handicapped space, perfectly positioned right by the automatic doors. Relief washed through him. His knee had been acting up all morning after therapy, and all he wanted was to grab some groceries and get back home to ice it. But before he could even turn his wheel, a white Lexus SUV darted in front of him and swung sharply into the spot, tires screeching just enough to make people turn their heads. The driver braked hard, almost clipping the blue-painted wheelchair sign on the pavement. Jake's relief turned to disbelief. He blinked, waiting for the driver to roll down a window and maybe wave an apology, maybe explain that she was just dropping someone off. But no one else was in the car. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a woman in her mid-40s, tall, wearing designer sunglasses and a tailored cream blazer over a floral dress. She had that look, the kind of woman who acted like the world owed her a shortcut. Her manicured hand adjusted her sunglasses as she clicked her high heels across the pavement, phone in one hand, coffee in the other. Jake rolled down his window and called politely, "Excuse me, ma'am, that's a handicapped spot. You don't seem to have a permit." Without missing a beat, the woman, Karen as Jake would later learn, turned slightly, her face tight with annoyance. "Oh, don't worry," she said, her voice dripping with that condescending tone reserved for people she deemed beneath her. "I'll just be a minute." Jake frowned. "That's not how it works. People actually need that space." She waved him off, not even turning around. "You'll survive," she snapped, striding toward the store entrance. Jake sat there for a moment, stunned. He wasn't someone who liked confrontation, but it wasn't about him. It was about everyone who struggled for mobility, who depended on that spot. He exhaled slowly, pulled forward, and parked 3 rows down. His knee twinged as he climbed out, every step reminding him why people like her made life harder for those who followed the rules. As he limped toward the entrance, he could still see Karen's Lexus, gleaming arrogantly in that blue outlined space. No placard, no permit, no shame. Inside Brightmart, Jake tried to let it go. He grabbed a cart, stretched his leg a little, and headed for the produce section. Maybe he'd get out quick, grab a coffee on the way home, and forget about the whole thing. But the universe wasn't about to let that happen. As Jake reached for a carton of milk, a familiar shrill voice rang out from 2 aisles over. "This is ridiculous! You people are always overcharging!" He froze. He knew that tone, that voice. Sure enough, when he rounded the corner, there she was, Karen herself, arguing with a young cashier who looked like he wanted to disappear. She was holding up a jar of almond butter, wagging it like it was a weapon. "I specifically saw this marked for $8.99, not $10.99, she barked, glaring at the poor boy behind the register. "Do you even know who I am? I shop here every week." Jake rolled his eyes and picked up a basket instead of a cart, knowing this might take a while. A couple of other customers glanced over, whispering, shaking their heads. Karen was in full performance mode now. Dramatic sighs, exaggerated gestures, and zero respect for anyone else in line. The cashier, voice trembling, said, "Ma'am, I can get the manager to check the price if you'd like." "I would like that," she interrupted. "And make it quick. Some of us have important things to do." Jake muttered under his breath. "Like illegally parking." Karen turned briefly, as if she sensed the jab, but he'd already turned toward the frozen aisle. He didn't want to start anything. He'd seen people like her 100 times, always above the rules, always treating others like props in their daily drama. But as he approached the checkout, Something outside caught his eye through the glass doors. A police cruiser had just pulled up to the curb, lights off, engine running. The officer inside seemed to be looking directly at the handicapped spots. He opened his door, stepped out, and started walking toward the white Lexus. Jake couldn't help but smile a little. Karma had a habit of showing up when least expected, and today, it had good timing. The officer's reflection glinted off the polished hood of Karen's car as he took out his notepad. Jake leaned slightly closer to the window, curiosity taking over. He could already picture how this was going to unfold, and for once he wasn't going to look away. He chuckled under his breath. "Guess your minute's up, lady." The quiet murmur of the checkout lines filled the air, beeping scanners, crinkling bags, and the low hum of conversation. Everyone was minding their own business until the sliding doors at the entrance parted and Officer Daniels walked in. He was in his late 30s, tall, broad-shouldered, with calm eyes that could cut through chaos without saying a word. His navy uniform was crisp, his badge gleaming under the store lights. As he stepped in, heads turned. Not because he looked intimidating, but because he radiated authority. Jake noticed immediately. He was at the end of the express line, basket half full, when the officer's steady stride carried him straight toward the customer service area, right where Karen was still locked in verbal combat with the poor manager. Karen didn't notice him at first. She was too busy waving a receipt like it was evidence in a court case. "I don't care what your scanner says," she snapped. "I know what I saw. That's false advertising, and I'll have this whole store written up for fraud if I have to." The manager, a tired man in his 50s with kind eyes, tried to reason. "Ma'am, we'll honor the lower price. It's really not—" "Oh, now you want to cooperate," she cut in sharply. "Typical. When someone of importance shows up, you suddenly remember how to do your job." Jake bit back a laugh. Someone of importance? She had no idea what was coming. Then the officer spoke, his voice deep and controlled. "Ma'am, could I have a quick word?" Karen turned, visibly irritated. "Excuse me? Can't you see I'm in the middle of resolving something?" "Yes," Officer Daniels said calmly, "and I'll only take a moment of your time." Karen straightened, clearly not used to being interrupted, especially not by a uniform. Her tone softened slightly, the fake politeness slipping back into her act. "Fine," she said with a huff. "Make it quick. Some of us have schedules." The manager stepped aside, looking relieved to be out of her firing range. Officer Daniels gestured toward the doors. "Is that white Lexus outside yours, ma'am?" Karen blinked. "Yes, why?" "Could I see your handicapped permit, please?" The color drained from her face, just a bit, before she forced out a short laugh. "Oh, that. I was only parked there for a minute." "Ma'am," the officer said, his tone still even, "there's no placard on your vehicle. You're parked in a restricted handicapped space. That's a violation." The surrounding shoppers started to quiet down, watching. The hum of the store dimmed into an awkward silence. Even the cashier pretended to straighten his register just to eavesdrop. Karen's face tightened. "You have got to be kidding me. Are you seriously wasting your time on this?" "It's not a waste of time," Daniels replied firmly. "It's the law. That space is reserved for people who genuinely need it." Karen crossed her arms, voice rising. "I told you, I was just running in for something quick. I have a bad knee." Jake almost choked on air. He couldn't help it. The irony was too much. Officer Daniels didn't flinch. "If you have a permit for your medical condition, I'll need to see it. Otherwise, you'll be cited." Karen's composure started to crack. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered. "I don't have one. But I'm not disabled. I'm just tired. I had a long morning." "Ma'am, the space isn't for people who are tired." That line hung in the air like a stone. A few people near the registers snorted quietly. One woman even muttered, "Finally, someone said it." Karen's voice grew sharp again, defensive and loud. "You don't need to embarrass me in public. This is harassment. I'm calling my husband. He's friends with someone in the city council." The officer didn't move, didn't blink. "You're welcome to call whoever you like." But that doesn't change the fact that you broke the law. Jake was grinning now, pretending to scroll his phone but recording the audio just in case. This was too perfect. Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice, though everyone still heard her. Look, officer, I think we can just forget about this. I'm sure you have more important things to do than ticket a loyal community member. Daniels tilted his head. Ma'am, are you trying to bribe me? Karen gasped. What? No, of course not. I'm simply suggesting you use discretion. People make mistakes. Then you'll understand if I make mine by the book, he said, taking out his notepad. Karen's jaw dropped. You're seriously going to give me a ticket? For that? For parking illegally in a handicapped zone. Yes, ma'am. As he began writing, Karen looked around for sympathy, but the crowd wasn't on her side. A few people shook their heads, others whispered things like, about time, and she does this every week. Her face turned bright red. This is ridiculous. You can't do this to me. The officer tore the ticket off the pad, handed it to her calmly, and said, Actually, I can, and I just did. You'll also need to move your vehicle immediately. She stared at the slip of paper like it was poison. Do you have any idea who I am? Daniels gave a faint, almost amused smile. A driver who needs to find a new parking spot. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence, before Karen snatched the ticket and stormed toward the door, muttering insults under her breath. Her heels clacked furiously against the tile as she stomped out. Jake followed at a distance, purely to witness the grand finale. Outside, Karen yanked open the Lexus door and slammed it shut. The officer stood nearby, arms crossed, watching as she backed out of the space too fast and nearly clipped a shopping cart. He called out, Ma'am, please drive carefully. She didn't reply, but the crowd of witnesses certainly did, with a few claps and even one man shouting, Justice served! Jake chuckled, shaking his head. Guess karma runs faster than her Lexus. Officer Daniels turned to him, recognizing the amused look. You were the one who saw her park there, huh? Jake nodded. Yeah, I tried to say something. She said she'd only be a minute. The officer smirked. She was right. One very expensive minute. Jake laughed, his knee aching but his spirit lighter than it had been all week. The morning after the grocery store incident, Jake thought the chaos was behind him. The viral-worthy moment of karma had made his entire week. He even told the story to his daughter, who laughed so hard she nearly spilled her cereal. But across town, in a 2-story suburban house with flower beds trimmed to perfection and wind chimes that tinkled just a bit too loudly, Karen was not laughing. She was furious. Sitting at her kitchen table, Karen clutched the bright yellow ticket like it was a personal betrayal. The words, Handicapped parking violation, $350 fine, stared back at her in bold print, mocking her. Her husband, Greg, peeked over the newspaper. Honey, maybe you should just pay it. Pay it? Karen hissed. Are you insane? I did nothing wrong. That cop humiliated me in front of everyone. He treated me like some criminal. Greg sighed. He'd heard this tone before, the one that meant she'd already made up her mind. Then what are you going to do? Karen leaned back with a smug grin. I'm going to fight it. That officer had no right to target me. I'll make sure his supervisor knows how unprofessional he was. Greg mumbled under his breath, Good luck with that, and buried himself back in the paper. By noon, Karen was marching into the local police department, ticket in hand and indignation blazing. She wore her best floral blouse and oversized sunglasses, as if she was about to film a reality show called Justice for Karen. The front desk officer, a young woman named Officer Kim, looked up politely. Good afternoon. How can I help you? Karen slapped the ticket onto the counter. Yes, I'd like to speak to whoever's in charge of this nonsense. Officer Kim glanced at the citation. Officer Daniels issued this yesterday, correct? Yes, and it's completely unjustified. I was parked for less than a minute. He embarrassed me in front of an entire grocery store. Officer Kim kept her composure. Ma'am, parking in a handicapped spot without a permit is against state law, even for a minute. Karen scoffed. You people really need to learn discretion. I'm a respected resident of the Lakeside HOA. I sit on the neighborhood board. Kim blinked slowly. I see. Would you like to file a complaint? Exactly, Karen said triumphantly. And I want to make sure that man is disciplined. Officer Kim nodded, retrieved a clipboard, and passed it across the counter. You'll need to fill out this form and provide a written statement. Karen's penmanship was as aggressive as her tone. Every sentence dripped with self-righteous fury. Officer was rude, dismissive, and targeted me unfairly for a minor oversight. By the time she finished, she felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. That'll teach him, she thought smugly. 2 days later, she received a call. Mrs. Collins, the voice said. This is Sergeant Miller from the Lakeside Police Department. You filed a complaint about one of our officers? Yes, Karen said quickly, her tone sugary sweet now. I'm glad someone finally called. I was humiliated over something so trivial. I've reviewed the report, ma'am, the sergeant said evenly. And we also pulled the security footage from the grocery store parking lot. Karen froze. What? The footage clearly shows your vehicle parked in the handicapped zone for approximately 12 minutes. Her throat went dry. 12? That's ridiculous. I wasn't there that long. It also shows you ignoring the posted signs. Unfortunately, the evidence supports the citation. Karen's voice grew high and panicky. You can't be serious. I told you I have a knee issue. There was a pause. Ma'am, you'll need a valid medical permit for that. Without it, the fine stands. Karen sputtered. Unbelievable. You people just protect your own, don't you? Typical. I assure you, ma'am, the sergeant said calmly, we treat every case the same. Karen slammed the phone down and let out a shrill groan that made Greg flinch from the living room. They're conspiring, she yelled. That officer is probably laughing at me right now. Greg tried not to respond. He'd learned silence was the safest answer. But his attempt to stay quiet failed when she added, I'm going to court. He lowered the remote. You're taking it to court? Over a parking ticket? Yes, Karen declared, and I'm going to win. A week later, Karen strutted into the municipal courthouse, wearing a navy blue blazer and holding a binder stuffed with evidence, mostly printouts of online parking debates and handwritten notes titled Unfair Treatment Examples. Jake, by pure coincidence, was also there. His friend worked as a court clerk, and when he heard a certain woman from the grocery store was contesting her ticket, he couldn't resist dropping by. When Karen saw Officer Daniels enter the courtroom, her expression hardened. Oh, you again. He nodded politely. Good morning, ma'am. She glared daggers. Don't pretend to be polite now. You humiliated me in public. He simply said, Ma'am, I was enforcing the law. That's my job. Karen turned away with a loud, "Hump!" The judge entered, an older man with tired eyes who looked like he'd seen every kind of nonsense imaginable. Mrs. Collins, he said, scanning her file. You're contesting a handicapped parking violation? Yes, Your Honor, she began confidently. I was only parked there briefly. The officer exaggerated the situation. Officer Daniels calmly handed the judge a USB drive. Your Honor, the footage from the store's camera system. The judge watched in silence as the video played, showing Karen pulling into the handicapped space, stepping out perfectly fine, chatting on her phone, and walking casually into the store. The room fell quiet. Jake bit his lip to keep from laughing. When the video ended, the judge looked up. Mrs. Collins, do you have a handicapped permit? Karen's voice trembled. No, but... He held up a hand. That's all I need to know. Her face went pale. You can't be serious. I am, the judge interrupted firmly. Your fine stands, and I'm adding court fees. Total amount, $450. Karen gasped. This is absurd. I'm not paying a cent. The judge gave her a long, weary look. Then I'll be forced to suspend your vehicle registration until it's paid. The sound of Jake's muffled laugh was the final nail. Karen spun around, glaring at him. This isn't over. But everyone in that courtroom, even her husband, who'd reluctantly tagged along, knew it absolutely was. The courtroom scene replayed in Karen's head all week like a broken record. Every time she tried to distract herself, watering her roses, scrolling through her HOA group chat, or lecturing the mailman about leaving packages crooked, her mind kept circling back to that humiliating moment. Total amount, $450. Those words haunted her, but it wasn't just the fine, it was the way everyone had looked at her, like she was some kind of joke, especially that man in the back of the courtroom. What was his name again? Oh, right. Jake, the one who had filmed her at the grocery store. She could still picture the smirk on his face. It made her blood boil. "I'm not the villain here," she muttered to herself, stabbing at her salad during lunch. "I just needed to grab a few groceries. People blow everything out of proportion these days." Greg sighed, not even pretending to listen this time. "Honey, maybe you should just let it go." "Let it go!" she snapped. "Greg, that cop humiliated me, that man laughed at me, and now everyone in town thinks I'm some selfish monster." Greg looked up from his phone. "Well, did you see the comments on the video?" Karen froze. "What video?" He winced. It went kinda viral. The grocery store footage. Someone uploaded it to a local Facebook page." Karen's fork clattered against her plate. "You're joking." He slid the phone across the table. The title glared at her in bold letters. Entitled Woman Gets Instant Karma for Parking in Handicapped Spot. Karen's jaw dropped. The clip had over 200,000 views, hundreds of laughing emojis, and thousands of comments calling her Handicapped Spot Karen. "Oh my God," she whispered, face turning crimson. "They're making fun of me?" Greg nodded weakly. "I told you not to fight the ticket." The next morning, Karen refused to leave the house. She closed all the curtains, ignored calls from her HOA friends, and avoided social media like it carried a virus. For someone who prided herself on being the face of the neighborhood, this was unbearable. But fate wasn't finished with her yet. That afternoon, as she sat in her living room nursing her embarrassment, she noticed something outside her window. A car, the same familiar blue sedan, pulling into the handicapped spot across from her driveway. She narrowed her eyes. Another rule breaker? Curiosity overpowered pride. She slipped on her sandals and stormed outside, ready to confront whoever dared take that spot. But as she approached, she froze. It wasn't some lazy driver. It was an elderly woman, maybe in her late 70s, carefully maneuvering out of the car with the help of a walker. She looked frail, her silver hair pulled back neatly, her breathing slow and deliberate. And right behind her, holding a grocery bag and guiding her gently, was none other than Officer Daniels. Karen's heart skipped. For a moment, she almost turned back, but it was too late. The officer noticed her. "Afternoon, Mrs. Collins," he said calmly. "How are you today?" Karen's throat tightened. I'm fine," she stammered, eyes darting to the elderly woman. Is she okay?" The woman smiled weakly. "Oh, I'm fine, dear. Just a little slow these days. This young man insisted on helping me unload my groceries." Karen's eyes dropped to the woman's car, and the clearly visible handicapped permit hanging from the rearview mirror. For the first time, she felt a pang of shame, sharp and undeniable. Officer Daniels adjusted the grocery bags in his arms. "Mrs. Thompson here had her usual spot taken last week when someone without a permit parked here. She had to walk all the way from down the street." Karen's stomach churned. "Oh, that's terrible." "Yes," the officer said softly. "Sometimes people don't realize how much a few extra steps can hurt someone who really needs that space." The silence that followed was heavy. Karen felt the burn of humiliation rise up her neck, not the angry kind she was used to, but the guilty kind, the kind that made her chest ache. Mrs. Thompson smiled kindly. "Don't worry, dear. We've all made mistakes." Karen forced a smile. Yes, mistakes." Officer Daniels nodded politely and continued helping the older woman inside. Karen stood frozen on her lawn, watching until they disappeared through the front door. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel angry. She felt small. That night, Karen couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the image of Mrs. Thompson's trembling hands gripping that walker, her gentle smile, her soft forgiveness. When she finally got up the courage to open her laptop, she searched for the Facebook video again. She scrolled through the comments, the mocking, the laughter, and instead of getting defensive, she simply sighed. They're right, she thought. I acted horribly. She clicked the comment button. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long time before she finally began to type. I'm the woman in this video. I parked where I shouldn't have, and I was wrong. To anyone who truly needs those spots, I'm sorry. I learned my lesson the hard way. She hit post before she could change her mind. Within an hour, the comment was flooded with reactions. Not mocking this time, but supportive. People appreciated her honesty. A few even replied with respect for owning up. For the first time since the ordeal began, Karen felt lighter. The next day, she saw Officer Daniels again outside Mrs. Thompson's home. This time, she approached him first. "Officer," she called out. He turned, slightly surprised. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for how I acted. I was rude, and I made things harder for you." He nodded slowly. "I appreciate that, Mrs. Collins. Not many people admit when they're wrong." Karen smiled faintly. "I actually made a donation this morning to the local Disability Access Fund. It's not much, but it felt like the right thing to do." The officer smiled. "That's good to hear. You know, it's never too late to do better." She looked at Mrs. Thompson's house and nodded. "Yeah, I guess you're right." As he walked away, Karen stood quietly in the afternoon sun, the world suddenly a little clearer. And for once, her reflection in the car window didn't look like the villain from the internet. She looked like someone who finally understood.